Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. 2 days from now, April the 19th, will be the second anniversary of the death of Freddie Gray. Since his death in police custody, the police force has been in retreat, surrounded by charges of brutality and corruption. Meantime, the homicide rate, which had been running around 200 deaths a year, jumped to over 300, and that pace continued this weekend with 5 murders in the city, one of them just down the street from the home of the new mayor, Catherine Pugh. Mayor Pugh joins us tonight to talk about all matters related to Baltimore. Madam Mayor, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
I apologize for having to start with negativity, but it's tough times. We're up to 90-plus homicides. It's mid-April. What's happening?
Well, let me just say, there are too many guns on the streets of our city, and we realize that. I mean, I have had call to actions, and there are community members who have come to say to us that they're ready to jump in and help us solve this problem. But we also realize that it's not just the community, it's certainly not the police by themselves. We're in the process of asking the FBI's special task force to help us to resolve some of these problems. It's just too many guns on our street.
How could the FBI help?
They have special gun task force. They can let us know where these guns are coming in from. We know that these guns are on our street very more fluidly than ever before. We find people are trading guns now for drugs. We also know, at least according to, not just myself, but the governor and the General Assembly, that opioid addiction is high, not just in Baltimore City, but throughout the state and throughout this country. And so it's created a problem in our city and in cities across the country. I mean, this is not just indicative of Baltimore. This is cities across the country where we see drug addiction going up and crime also rising.
One of the unique things about the violence in Baltimore at the moment is the difficulty in solving individual cases. The clearance rate for homicides has been running as low as 30% in the last couple of years, meaning that somebody who kills somebody in Baltimore has a pretty good shot of getting away with it. How do we change that?
Well, let me just say we did put forth legislation this past session trying to change that. But, the state's attorney's office also has, some responsibility for that as well. And I think that they're working hard on that particular issue, and we're continuing to work with them as well. But let me just say, too, that domestic violence in our city is up. And the way that we handle domestic violence issues amongst each other, I think, has just escalated into this kind of violence that we've never seen before. So we're working to curb this kind of violence. But, conversations need to be had with communities. And again, I think these special task force are really important to us as we continue to move the city forward.
What's happening with the consent decree that was negotiated between the Obama Justice Department and your administration and the previous administration? There was a hearing. The Trump administration wanted to delay that. It wasn't delayed. So what happens next?
We move forward now. We move forward, and I'm glad to say that I did have the opportunity to speak to the judge, and I told him of our commitment to do what we thought was necessary after the 163-page report that identified areas that needed to be improved in our police department and the relationship that needs to be built between the community and the police department. And so we were committed to move forward, and the judge denied any requests to delay this, and so it has been signed. And now we will be announcing very shortly that we will have a community civilian group that will act as advisors as it relates to the consent decree, and then we'll submit our RFP, request for proposals for the independent monitor as we move forward.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question for Mayor Pugh, give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen. You can also tweet your questions. The Twitter address is @MPT News. From your standpoint, what is the value of the consent decree? And if the Trump administration isn't so highly invested in this, the Attorney General Sessions has said, he thinks it harms police morale. Does it affect what you're trying to accomplish?
No, but what he did say toward the end was that he was prepared to work with Baltimore to reduce crime and to improve its police department. And that is more than we expected him to say, but certainly what we needed him to say. Because what it does is it allows us to work with our federal partners, because what people don't understand is that what this will cost the city, is anywhere between $11 to $15 million a year, because the independent monitor itself is about $1.5 million. And what is in the consent decree is not just building relationships between the police and the community, the training that is necessary, the hardware that is necessary, the technology that is necessary. All of those come with a cost, and we are committed to make sure that those costs are met. But we do need assistance, and so this does open the door for federal assistance as well as with state assistance. We've gotten $2 million for the consent decree from the state during this General Assembly. We've put at least allotted $10 million in our own budget for the consent decree. And again, we know what it took in New Orleans. New Orleans with half the police force that we have. It took them 14 months to negotiate a consent decree, while it took us something like 40 to 60 days to do so. But we also know what that cost is. So we're basing what we're estimating to be our cost based on what happened in New Orleans and what happened in Ferguson. Again, we're twice the size of their police force, so it can be, we just don't know exactly what that cost is going to be.
So, I mean, the purpose of the consent decree is to change the culture, the tradition, really, of brutality, civil rights violations, maybe the corruption component as well. Does it do anything in terms of reducing violent crime?
Well, let me just say the consent decree was focused on developing a better relationship with the community and the police department. And it was also focused on having our police department have the kind of technology that they need. And we believe that some of that technology will help to improve how we resolve crime in our community. So I think it does a little bit of both. Even how you handle those who have mental health issues, those who are handicapped, those who have drug addiction issues, all of that comes with the kind of training that we believe is necessary to help reform our police department.
Let's get to the phones. We'll start with Pearl in Baltimore City. Pearl, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
I'm asking about absentee landlords that have let the properties go. They don't take care of anything. The fronts and the backs of the houses are gone. The tenants don't care. And this, of course, leads to a situation where people just walk around and you have properties that have just lost value and homeowners are losing value and nothing is done by the city. Thank
Pearl,
you.
we'll get you an answer. Thanks very much. Absentee landlords.
Well, I don't think that nothing has been done by the city. If you think about it, just a few years ago when we had something like 40,000 boarded houses in the city, and we're now down to about 15,000 that are owned by the city. But the reality is that we've got to have more investment in our communities and in our neighborhoods, which is something that we're working on. If you were, for example, to go up on North Avenue right there at Linden, where you see we tore down some old apartment buildings and now rebuilding a new school and a new community over there as well. I agree with her that we have some absentee landlords, but we also have a focus now on how we do community development, working with some of the CDCs in our community, developing CDCs, community development corporations that don't exist in certain neighborhoods. But when you think of, for example, like in Druid Heights, the Druid Heights Community Development Corporation, beginning to work with those organizations that have been in place but don't have the resources. So part of that is our commitment on how we work with neighborhoods and communities. I always say that, there was a burnt out church on 1563 North Fulton Street that had been burnt out for over a decade. And, it took me saying in an inauguration address that if 1563 North Fulton Street was sitting any place else, we would have torn it down by now. Well, it's finally been torn down. The commitment to the communities and neighborhoods has to be a part of what we do as a city committed to bringing about the change that is necessary.
I have to say, we've been on the air for 9 minutes and talked about a lot of negative things, but there are parts of Baltimore, the waterfront sections of town are thriving. You have people moving in, you have new buildings going up. It's great for the tax base. It's maybe a little bit too good for the tax base when you look at what that means for school funding, but it's a question of how to not have two separate cities.
Well, again, that means you have to expand your commitment to neighborhoods and communities that have been neglected for a while. When you think about, for example, the Park Heights corridor, even over in East Baltimore, where Johns Hopkins has begun investment in that neighborhood, has expanded its investment in that particular neighborhood. $35,000 per individual who would move in that neighborhood is the kind of dedication that Johns Hopkins has made. When you think about the Morgan Park area, where Morgan State University is now investing in a 1-mile area. When you think about over on Baltimore Street, where the University of Maryland Biotech Park, they've begun to invest in those neighborhoods and their communities. 1,400 new houses going up in that area, in the Poppleton area, because we've decided, and picking up from where previous administrations have focused, we've begun to focus more on the neighborhoods and communities that need to bring about that change. We're excited about the harbor because the harbor brings in tourist dollars. That's where a lot of jobs are created, whether it is in the hospitality industry and in the tourism industry. This makes a difference for Baltimore City. So we believe in that investment, but we also believe in the investment that needs to take place in our communities.
Back to the phones, Baltimore City. This is Zach. Zach, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I'm a resident of District 7. I have a question about the accessibility and transparency of City Hall. You recently announced the Open City Hall web portal to solicit citizen impact. A week before that, I was actually asked by the greeter and police agent at City Hall to leave because I didn't have an official appointment or business. So my question is that why do citizens have to have an official appointment or business to enter City Hall? Are you willing to change the policy to make it consistent with what happens at City
Zach,
Hall?
your phone's breaking up a little bit, but he's concerned about accessibility of City Hall and whether people need to have an appointment to come in to see somebody.
Well, I think people have to have an appointment to come in to see anybody. There are over 1,000 phone calls a day. There are probably 15 to 2,000 requests every single day to come in City Hall. City Hall is public, so people can come in at any time. I walk through the front door every day. I think that in order to be able to see people, I think you would want to have an appointment so that you can make sure that the conversations you want to have are had. But we do have an Open City Hall website so that people who have questions that need to be answered immediately, we do that. And I remind people that, it's not just the mayor. We have a city council, and everybody has a city council person that helps to carry their message to the mayor. So we try to be as open and as transparent as we possibly can be.
Let's talk about the other thing that people, the two things that people really focus on when they're looking for a place to live, place to raise a family. You're looking at safety, you're looking at schools. What's happening with the schools? The legislative session that just ended gave you the authority as mayor to appoint members to the city school board. It used to be a joint city-state issue. They also gave you money for the schools because of this enormous deficit. What's happening?
Well, let me just say that in 1997, what most people don't realize is that the school system was separated from the city. And so, unlike other jurisdictions where the money comes from the state, because it's all of our taxpayers' dollars and goes to the various jurisdictions, our money comes from the state and goes directly to the school system. Our school system has a $1.4 billion operating budget, whereas the city has a $2.8 billion operating budget. We learned early this year that our school system had a structural deficit. Much of that structural deficit is created by the fact that we have more charter public schools in Baltimore City than the entire state. And I always tell folks, do the math. When they talked about laying off 1,000 people, if you have on an average 50 people working in your charter public school system, that's 1,500 people that are not required to be hired from the public school system. So it creates a structural deficit.
So the idea is that there are fewer kids in the public schools.
Yeah, we're all scrambling for the same population. There are fewer children in the public school system, but everybody's scrambling for the same population, whether you're a charter public school, a Catholic school, or whoever. Everybody's clamoring for that same population. So that's what creates a structural deficit. So when we learned that, we were giving something like $400 million extra to the school system, including what they were already getting. So what we did was we looked inside of our budget, created a structural deficit for the city because we had to go into our rainy day fund and came up with an additional $22 million a year, which now becomes $90 million over a 3-year period. And we went to Annapolis and got another $40-some-odd million from the legislature, and then another $23 million from the governor, which came up to about $100 or so $million that we've added. Plus, we also got an additional monies from our revenue from our highway user funds, another $4.5 million for transportation for our young people so that after school they can be able to travel for free.
Do you appoint a new school board, or it's just as vacancies arise,
As
you
vacancies
get to
arise,
fill them?
I will get to fill those vacancies. But let me just say, this is also with community input as well.
Very good. Back to the phones. Allegheny County, this is Lisa. Lisa, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Hi, I love to visit Baltimore, and I'm curious to know, and I enjoy the ethnicity of the centers in Baltimore, but how are you integrating the small business community to encourage tourism into the different sections of Baltimore?
Very good. Maybe focus on the tourism part. What do you think?
Well, we have a minority business enterprise group. We've had it in various aspects of the city, whether it is in the Baltimore Development Corporation or the city's minority business enterprise office. So to create that concentration, what we're going to do is to bring that under one roof and make that a cabinet level position that allows who heads our minority business enterprise office to also sit on the board of the Baltimore Development Corporation so that we can create that diversity and inclusion in the businesses that are in our downtown area, in our tourist area, in our Main Streets corridor, so that we can have, as she pointed out, some more diversity in those particular areas, and we're working on that now.
Let's talk to Robert in Baltimore City. Robert, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor. I've been a city resident my entire life, and I worked as a city employee for years, and I also was a volunteer working with children and teenagers. And what concerns me is I know that there's still a problem with teen pregnancy. And I see so many of these girls who are working at these low-paying jobs, having to support themselves, having to support a child. It just seems to me that it's such a burden on them. How's the city working on maybe making Baltimore City, the city where we have low teen pregnancies?
Robert, thank you.
Well, Robert, you'll be happy to know that Baltimore City has reduced its teen pregnancy, and it's probably lower than it's ever been for quite some time, because we do a lot of education in our public school system. And I was just speaking to a group of women this morning talking about how we continue to work with our young people and focus on how they become more successful as individuals. But let me just also say that, you know, it becomes all of our responsibilities to make sure that we're educating our young people at their earliest age and teaching them, you know, how to maintain themselves, how to be control, you know, their sexual activity and so forth. But when I look at what's happening today, and again, the statistics will tell you that our teen pregnancy is down in Baltimore City specifically.
Let me ask a minimum wage question. The city council wanted to raise the minimum wage to $15 just in the city. The state minimum wage is going up. You vetoed that. Supporters of it are upset that you had previously indicated you wouldn't veto it. Why the change of heart?
Well, let me just say, first of all, this particular bill couched $15 an hour, 2024, 2026. The problem was that most people thought that if the bill passed tomorrow, that $15 an hour would be the wage the next day, which is in fact not the case. It was stretched out 9 years from now. So what I was one of the leaders in Annapolis as it relates to moving the minimum wage to where it is today, and it goes up again this year and will go up again in 2018. So I tell folks that my conversation was not just with business people, but with our surrounding jurisdictions, none of which plan to move the minimum wage, and also with those who are in the help business, whether it was, you know, the United Way or some of the other organizations or Associated Jewish Charities and others, and Associated Catholic Charities, who said, you know, it's very difficult when you think about 3,000 people who are currently sleeping on the streets of our city, 76,000 people who are unemployed, that we have to get to work. And a minimum increase in the minimum wage in Baltimore only puts us as the hole in a donut when the surrounding jurisdictions would not move that. And at the same time, it was more how it was couched as opposed to whether it should be done in 2024 or 2026. I would think that we don't know exactly what the economy is going to look like in 2024 or 2026. It may be higher than $15 an hour by then. But I would hope that anybody that's making $15 an hour today, $10 an hour today, would certainly be making more than that in 9 years from now.
Back to the phones, Howard County. This is Gladys. Gladys, thank you for the call. Go ahead. Gladys, you're on. 5 seconds. Gladys, go ahead with your question. Nope. Gladys, call us back. Legislature, how did the city do this year in terms of jobs, which we were talking about? There it goes. There's a new tax incentive for manufacturers to locate in some economically disadvantaged parts of the state, including Baltimore. What will that mean?
Which I think is great for Baltimore. It lures manufacturing to Baltimore. We have a number of industrial parks. We have a number of areas which we would love to have manufacturing come to. You know, I was just down at Amazon. While that's not a manufacturing plant, 3,000 people who work down there, over 1,000 of them from Baltimore City. So we certainly can use the jobs, and it is very necessary for our city. But we've got to get training and so forth in place. And then with our new mobile jobs unit that's now on the streets through the Enoch Pratt Library.
The mobile jobs unit?
Yes. You haven't seen it?
I have not seen that.
Yes. We just unveiled it last week with the Enoch Pratt Library, and fueled by Constellation Energy. That's the first one that's out on the street, and we're looking forward to having another one out on the street within the next 6 months to a year, so that we can go directly to those neighborhoods and communities where unemployment are at its highest. And as I tell folks that, you know, the data is already there. We know that, for example, that the Old Town Mall area is the #1 highest unemployment area in the city. Penn North, Cherry Hill, all of those areas are within the top 10. So we now will be able to go directly to those neighborhoods and communities to help people get to work.
Let's take a call from Baltimore City. This is Michelle. Michelle, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hi, hello, good evening, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much for all that you've done so far in the city. My question is about senior citizens on fixed incomes who want to stay in their homes. With the water bill being so high and the taxes being so high, is there anything that's going to be done so that they can stay in their homes?
Thank you.
So let me just say first that we're continuing our trajectory of continuing to lower our taxes. We're still on a trajectory to lower it by 20 cents by 2020. And she should also go online, because there are a number of programs just for seniors to provide them with assistance. And I tell folks that, you know we've got a serious problem with our water system in Baltimore. It is one of the oldest systems in the country, over 100 years old, and almost on any given day you can see water shooting up from the ground, because we're under a federal mandate to fix our water system. So the water bills have increased. I think they went up something like 9%. But again, there is assistance. Again, I asked them to go online through our water department and find out what kind of assistance can be provided.
Big focus for every mayor I've known has been the summer jobs program.
Absolutely.
We're looking ahead to the summer. What can you do? Because the idea of talking about getting people into the workforce, best if you start at a young age and get some experience and exposure.
Yeah, well, let me just say, we've instructed every department and agency in the city to hire young people during the summer. We've got 12,500 young people who applied to work this summer. So working with the private sector, we're at a goal to try to raise at least $18 million to get young people working. But what I'm also saying to folks is, don't just think about throwing the city money for these jobs. Take young people into your employment so they can see beyond the 4 square block radius in which they live, so that they can get the opportunity to see what they can dream to be and can be if given the opportunity and the exposure. So we're working very closely with the private sector, and I'm really, really optimistic about our ability to be able to employ those young people. I'm also saying to the religious and faith community to help us out as well. Take up a collection on a Sunday or whatever your day may be of worship, and provide us with assistance. It takes $1,500 to, in fact, hire one youth this summer. And again, we're looking at year-round employment for young people as well.
Because if you're growing up in a neighborhood where the bullets are flying and the schools maybe aren't great, and like you said, you probably don't get more than 4 blocks away from where you live all that often, opening your eyes, widening your perspectives counts for a lot.
Yes, and I want to go on the record as saying that we got some great schools in Baltimore and some great opportunities for our young people. And so we want to continue to lift them up, push them forward, and give them the support that they need.
Call from Baltimore City. This is Jamil. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Hello. How are you?
Good. Thanks for calling. What's your question?
Yes. Well, first, I just want to say I voted for the mayor, and I hope that she does a great job as mayor. I also want to say that I recently benefited from a city-funded school, Maryland Center for Adult Training, where I just recently graduated as a CNA, GNA, and CMT. So I really think that's a great program. And I just wanted to know, does the city have any plans to maybe expand or have any more programs that could help Baltimore City residents to get educated, because I believe that would also help prevent a lot of the, well, I won't say a lot, but that would help prevent crime and also kind of help people to strive for more and create a better city.
Thank you for the call. Best of luck in your career.
Yes, and congratulations. Let me just say he's absolutely right. I was just at the Center for Urban Families. I've actually served on their board for a number of years, and really excited about the work that they're doing. But there are a lot of programs in Baltimore, whether it is Vehicles for Change, Jump Start. There are a lot of programs that are just focused on helping folks to get into careers, and we're working with the building trades as well to help young people and adults to get into these careers. And let me just also say that when I talk about investing in neighborhoods and communities, I think about Pennsylvania Avenue and all of the work that we're trying to do in that area. For example, with the Shake and Bake, I think it's about 60% of the lanes over there don't work, so we're investing in that. There's a field down there right above Dolphin Street that we're going to put some lights up, put some bleachers on, instead of the parents having to drag their lawn chairs over there and mark the field with orange cones. We're going to mark that field. We're going to level it right after the baseball season. You know, I really believe that when we invest in our neighborhoods, invest in young people, and invest in training, we can change the trajectory of our city.
Mayor Catherine Pugh, the new mayor of Baltimore City. You're still the new mayor. It's been about 4 months.
I'm still the new mayor?
Still the new mayor. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you
really
so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us for Direct Connection. We're back Thursday with Your Money and Business. We'll find out the role that positive psychology plays in the workplace. Now, for all of us here at MPT, I'm Jeff Salkin. Thanks for watching Direct Connection, and have a good night.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.